Welcome, everyone, to an amazing episode here. We have the founder and CEO of Pin and Grow, Craig Lewis. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you, Taylor. I know we connected a while back, and you mentioned about being on the podcast, and I'm super excited to be here, and I'm looking forward to sharing some of the stuff we're doing on Pinterest, but also some of the stuff that we see on Pinterest, and maybe even the possible future trajectory of where we see Pinterest going as well.
Amazing. I love that. As you know, we work pretty heavily with female entrepreneurs, and the majority of our brands are really focused on a demographic that suits Pinterest really, really well. And so it's really fitting that, we have you here as a Pinterest expert, really to talk about some of these different pieces. So I'm super excited to dive in. So why don't we start? Give us a little background of your agency, Pin and Grow, what you guys are up to, so that everyone understands.
Yeah, awesome. Maybe if I share kind of a little backstory of how we came into being, and then because it's a little bit different than probably a lot of other things that might happen in the start of an agency. So in 2019, I was living in Thailand at the time, and I basically snuck into a mastermind, and I got part of that mastermind. It wasn't actually suitable for me at that time because I didn't have a business that was suitable for the mastermind I was running. Anyway, long story short, I snuck into it. Went into the mastermind with a different business. Came out of the mastermind with a Pinterest marketing agency.
Okay, so I get sneaking into maybe a wedding or a concert or maybe a sporting event, but a mastermind? That's pretty good.
It was kind of it's really nice because after spending the month with everyone, this was an in-person mastermind in Thailand, and after spending pretty much a month with everybody, we met once a week, but we also communicated pretty heavily for the month. I would consider half of that group close personal friends now, and it's nearly 3 years, coming up to 3 years. So
that's so good.
I'm glad I did that.
I love that. Well, you're pretty motivated to actually sneak into a mastermind and then flip that around and totally start Pin and Grow. That's incredible.
Yeah, it was really interesting. I'd been using Pinterest personally since 2017. I grew a couple of info product businesses using it, and I just had my head down, in staying in my lane for pretty much 2 years, and then basically attending that mastermind with some pretty high level business owners. That's the best way to describe it. I realized they knew nothing about Pinterest, and by the end of it, they were kind of gently suggesting if I opened up something, or if I did something, anything to do with Pinterest, they would basically sign as clients. So
wow.
I kind of opened a beta program. I ran it for 3 months, and we sold out 10 spots within the first 2 or 3 weeks. So I was okay, this is obviously something I should probably pursue a little bit more, with more intent. So that's kind of how we started.
It's really cool.
It's a little bit different, and it's just been a really interesting couple of years. We've pretty much grown organically. Only up until I would say the end of last year, everything was 100% organically. So referrals and individuals would refer us. Only now we're branching out into different channels. So it's been interesting. That's kind of how we started, how we grew.
Super cool.
That's that's pretty much how we started.
A little bit of the backstory. No, that's incredible. I love that story. I mean, every time a founder kind of goes through that journey of figuring out, okay, how do I add value? Where's the opportunity? How can I support myself and then others with this business? I just love those type of stories because there's always little lessons. And it's so fun. It says a lot about you personally, but also about your brand, that at the end of that mastermind, people were kind of, hey, if you do this, there's an opportunity. Maybe we could work together. That's really cool. That's really cool.
It was interesting. And a lot of them became clients, paid clients at the time. And like one came to visit me in Bali a couple of months back. So we're still like, we keep in contact constantly, and 3 years later. So it's really, really nice. Yeah.
That's crazy. That's super cool. No, I love that. I love that energy. That's something that's incredible. So as you go, you've been at Pinterest for quite a while. We personally have watched Pinterest evolve in a lot of different ways as a platform, and actually test a lot of things. Like I've seen Pinterest almost, I've always kind of categorized Pinterest as like a teenager. It's like trying to figure out who it is and like, does it serve this or does it do that? Is it like, is it into this? Is it into that? Like, I feel like Pinterest as a marketing platform and just as a channel is constantly evolving and changing. What are some of the things that you are seeing in these last couple months?
Yeah, that's actually a really interesting question. I would say, I would agree with all of that. Like from someone that's used it since 2017 as a business owner, and then someone that's been using it since 2019 as an agency owner, just using Pinterest. Yeah, it's like a spoiled brat. it's like I think I want this, but now I want to do this. Now I'm fed up with this. I want to try this instead. And it's changed a lot. And I think maybe on a big picture, from in the early days when we started using it, it felt like a free-for-all and anyone could gain massive traffic. Like we're talking, and we did this with a couple of case studies. We went from 0 to 30,000 page views just from Pinterest with a brand new account within like 45 days. Like it was,
oh my gosh,
yeah,
that's insane.
And this was in 2017 and 2018. And in 2019. And I mean, we've taken accounts from 0 to 100,000 page views a month consistently within like 6 to 9 month period.
That's incredible.
That changed like a lot. And I feel in the last 12 to 18 months, pretty much that's when I feel like the big shift actually came, is there's less of an emphasis on the organic aspect of it. And very much a focus on the paid advertising aspect. And I actually think even in that path, the focus is on e-commerce, not so much like content creators or even info product owners. I do feel it's heavily invested in that little path of paid advertising. That's kind of the shift that we've seen, is very much like less of an emphasis on the organic side and pretty heavy on the paid advertising aspect. I mean, I guess that's kind of the natural evolution of media platforms in general. Like I guess they're very much on that trajectory right now.
What's really interesting is we've been preaching this to all of our clients for a long time. It's this idea that these social platforms follow the same type of cycles and evolutions every single time. So like Facebook, when it first came out, like the organic reach for the brands that really leaned into that platform was insane. And then it moved towards a pay to play type model. Same thing with Instagram. You could get on there, you could get hundreds of thousands of like real followers and scale a brand all on organic. And then it started moving more and more to a pay to play. And Pinterest has done the same thing. TikTok is doing the same thing. In whatever platform's next, and this is kind of like a sign to any business owner, is it pays to invest in these platforms early on. Because you get that tailwind of that organic momentum. And then when you do start to spend money, you kind of see that come together in a pretty amazing way.
I completely agree, because if I personally know a lot of accounts that have been on Pinterest 2017 and even before 2017. And they built up such momentum that on the organic side, that it does not matter what changes Pinterest make on the algorithm side of the organic, it doesn't do it. And we're talking accounts that see like anything from 100,000 to 300,000 page views a month just from Pinterest, like site visits.
Wow.
It doesn't change. And
it's incredible.
It's insane. So I used to take the approach of there's not always a need to jump onto new platforms constantly, but I've changed that perspective. I think that if you have an opportunity as a brand owner to become, it doesn't even need to be an early adopter. It can just be in that early phase. You can
That
just
early phase, yeah.
You could just be like a year later, and you will still get the benefit of just being on a new platform and just riding that wave up and just stay on the platform and be consistent. That's it.
Yeah. No, I love that. That is so interesting. And about a year and a half ago, Focus Funnels, we were actually invited up to Pinterest headquarters, and we met with their SMB team.
Okay.
And it was a wild time. This is when we were heavily invested in Pinterest marketing. We had roughly like 45 clients on Pinterest.
Okay.
It was sizable. It was a big part of our business. And what happened when I walked out of that meeting, I was like, oh gosh, we are in for some big changes.
Okay.
And in the next 3 months, they iterated this SMB team that Pinterest was building out.
Yeah.
Iterated all these new products, and they were so early on, but they were pushing them really aggressively.
Yeah.
And they were not vetted out on the back end. And we ended up losing a lot of those clients just because we couldn't scale them on Pinterest. It was like kind of an absolute nightmare. But it's interesting that you saw that shift, about a year and a half ago, because we felt that in a pretty big way too.
Yeah, it's interesting. And like, I don't know what it was. There was something inside of me that was just, I think that the thing that triggered it for me, there was actually two major things that triggered it for me, and whether one had happened before, and maybe I just saw them both at the same time, but they were pushing heavy on the verified merchant program. And the verified merchant is essentially the blue tick, like on Facebook and Instagram. They were heavy pushing this, and they were adding like a ton of really cool features in that you don't get if you're not.
Yep.
So I thought, okay, that's interesting. Like, as an example, two of the major things were, if you become a verified merchant, we will essentially show your organic content at a 20 to 30% increase. Like, that's pretty much what it was saying. So it's like, okay, that's interesting. Without doing anything different,
right,
your views would go up essentially. And then the other aspect was, if you become part of this program, we're going to put a shop on your Pinterest account, and we're going to show these images organically for free, essentially.
Yep.
So that's interesting. Like, showing products for free. This was about 18 months ago. I thought, this is like pretty big. And then at the same time, roughly, I was noticing that e-commerce aggregators were just on an exponential growth, and it just looked like it just seemed like synergy, where it was like e-commerce is very much like on an upward trajectory in terms of acquisitions.
Yep.
Just explosion of brands in general, and brands becoming bigger. And I just saw an opportunity where, like, this phase of growth in this niche is coinciding with what Pinterest are changing on their platform to accommodate. And I just thought, this is the route that they're going. So we kind of, at that point, we just went into e-commerce brands that are suitable for Pinterest, and that's kind of the route that we took. Yeah. Oh,
that was wise. Yeah. No, way to read the tea leaves, because like that's, I think has played out super well. Like, when you go on Pinterest, it really is tailored now towards e-com.
Yeah.
With the different ad sets that they're able to run, the different audience targeting, the improved tracking they've built out, like everything is all catered towards that e-com audience.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to think. So actually, this was probably around the same time, maybe a little bit after, but they totally revamped like the ad manager, because I know, like, maybe actually you might know better than me, because if you were running ads a while back, you probably would have seen the ad manager in its infancy, where you didn't have like all of those ad sets, you didn't have the targeting that was available now. It was very like rudimentary, but even today, it's still not anywhere like other ad platforms, but it's like light years away from what it was like 18 months ago.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like, when we were running ads, it was still very rough. Yeah. And we actually, another funny story is, we started engaging and getting more clients on Pinterest, and we found a really good rep on the SMB team at Pinterest, and we hired him. Okay. We're like, hey, we need your help to like get in and build this out. And so like we brought him over and started, and that was like really fun too. Just like hearing, and then it was super interesting because just as an agency, what the platform tells you to do and what is sometimes the right choice for a client are two different things.
Yeah, very true.
This happens all the time. Like you'll meet with a Facebook rep or a TikTok rep or a Pinterest rep, and they essentially are talk track whatever corporate wants them to push.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's really bad advice.
Yeah.
And so when we brought over this employee from Pinterest and trained them on our systems and our processes, he was like, well, that's not what like corporate's telling us. And we're like, hey, we kind of have to throw that playbook out the window. Cause so it was fun, like going through that whole process and like seeing the juxtaposition between, corporate versus agency and what's happening with the brand.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting you mentioned that, like we still see that play out now. Like we have access to maybe 10 to 15 different agent reps within Pinterest for our clients, and they get dedicated to individual clients. And I would say 99% of the time, the answer to all problems for growing or improving the performance of a brand, individual campaigns, the answer is always nearly just put more money at it. I don't know if like that's the answer that we need to test first. I think there's probably something else. So it's good that like we have the contrast, because my team, the ad specialists on Pinterest, like that's not our first answer.
Yeah.
Our first answer is like a range of other stuff.
Right.
So it's just interesting, like it's still the same. It's like, yeah, if you just double the spend, it'll fix. I'm like, I don't know if we want to do that right now. I think
double the spend. That's my favorite.
Yeah, there's probably
so
other
it's
stuff
not working at this amount, but if we double it, you're saying it's gonna come together.
Yeah, I know. So in the very, very early stages of running the ads, we were like, maybe, like possibly, maybe this is how Pinterest's like ad algorithm works.
Right.
And then the more people I was speaking to, and obviously we tested at a small scale, and then like the more my team built in terms of like skill level and knowledge, they were like, no, that's terrible advice.
No, it's like,
don't start with that.
No, it's the worst advice.
Yeah. So no, we kind of like don't use that. We look at a bunch of other stuff first.
Yeah. So one of the trends that we're seeing across, we play heavily on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Google is where we spend most of our time. And one of the trends that we're noticing right now, and I'm interested to hear if you're seeing this as well, is the content and the way that we're creating the content and positioning it on these platforms has been the single biggest needle mover in terms of performance.
Okay.
Right? By dialing in the right content with the right messaging. And then obviously you need the technical aspect of buying the right ad sets and delivering it to the right audience, which obviously, we're really good at. But what are you seeing on the content side on Pinterest in the last couple of months?
Yeah, that's interesting. I would say, I feel like, I don't know for sure, because like this is just my gut feeling and kind of what we're possibly seeing, but I feel that we're in the middle of a change. It's not like happened or happening. I feel like we're in the middle of something. So just to give you like a background, I would say up until like 3 months ago, the majority of really well performing creatives were from static images, and just like not old fashioned, that's not the right word, but it's like old school. It's just like, this is how we used to do, and it's kind of like how it's still playing out. And we still do get really good results with static images, providing the image is nice and the messaging and the copy, all of that is suitable. However, depending on the brand, like it kind of can shift in favor of video, but also the way the video is created. So where we've not seen massive results with branded, polished videos, we see better resonance with customers and visitors with more, it doesn't need to be like user generated content, but less polished. So someone on a phone talking about the product, even if it's the owner, it just seems to come across more authentic when it's not polished than when it is like a branded, polished video. So
totally.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know it, like maybe it's like we're at this tipping point. Maybe it will go this way, maybe it'll go back the other way. We don't have enough data. It's just kind of the stuff that we're seeing right now. But I would say creatives are massive on Pinterest. Like it's a visual platform. So it's very
everything.
important. Yeah, it's super important that images are high quality, like anyway, the assets are high quality. And also I think just the way it's created, obviously the way it's presented is important, but the way it's created, and I think this probably applies to all of the platforms. It's like the first 3 to 5 seconds like matter, whether it's a static images, whether it's user generated content, or whether it's like just a video in general. Something has to make someone stick. And I know that's like pretty common, but it's playing out more and more on Pinterest right now. So yes, something is definitely happening. I don't think we've shifted one way or the other, but I feel like something is like happening right now.
What 100%. And we are seeing that in a massive way on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok specifically. And then what's also interesting about those platforms is we're starting to place different types of content at different stages in the funnel.
Interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, so for example, top of the funnel, engagement, brand awareness, just getting in front of cold audiences will lead with that user generated, you know, very raw, authentic type video that's clearly talking about a problem. And then leads into a solution that whatever that product solves. Right. And then we'll use static, carousel, and some other different types of ad sets, you know, for that second, third, fourth touch.
Interesting.
And then at the bottom of the funnel, we'll usually go back to like a user testimonial or diving deeper into the problem that the product will actually solve. Right.
That's interesting. So I would say our best performing clients, campaigns, and setup is the reverse of what you just said.
That's super interesting. So once again, it's like is the difference between like Pinterest versus Facebook and Instagram. And that's why it's so important to like know what you're doing. But keep going with that thought.
We see better, so cold prospecting, like top of funnel. We see at the moment, we've seen the best results from static images. And then we trickle down into more video. But sometimes we don't need to. Sometimes the static images will just drive everything.
Right.
But on the retargeting and anything like follows up in that can be classed as retargeting in any aspect, video and user generated content at that aspect.
That is fascinating.
Super interesting.
It's like it's almost like the flip, like on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok is what we're seeing.
But like I'm sure there's other agencies using Pinterest that might not agree with what I've just said, but that's kind of like what we've seen. I don't know if that will continue. Maybe it will change eventually. But yeah, really interesting. Static images for the right brand and the right product, they can perform exceptionally well for like sales, but also just attracting the right people at the right time too.
Oh, I love that. No, that's incredible. So, you know, obviously Pinterest, there's like so much movement on there. There's a lot of average daily users. Like it's just a huge opportunity for most brands. What would you say is Pinterest one of their superpowers or something that you feel like they do really well?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say whether this is organic or paid advertising, I think the higher quality the image, not including user generated stuff, because that's like specific in a process. The higher quality the image, we feel the platform rewards that kind of content. So that I would definitely say that, like, sometimes you see some very low pixelated images, they seem to drop off quite quickly, regardless of if it's a campaign or organic. But high quality, really well shot photos and images, like they do pretty well. What's also interesting is, and again, this is not so much like to do with Pinterest themselves, and maybe you guys see this too, we're seeing less and less interest with standard product listings on clients and brands sites. And I don't know whether this is Pinterest, like the mindset of someone on Pinterest, but we see more traction and a higher return on investment for clients when we send them to specific landing pages that are like info pages that are they're a sales page, like there's a call to action, very clear, but it's highlighting, like it's the hook story offer section. It's like, yes, the product listings, they're kind of fading out. I think people want to understand more about what it is that they've just landed on. And I don't know if that's a Pinterest thing, because I know Pinterest is a search and discovery platform. So it's like, I'm still looking for an idea at this point, or a solution, or like inspiration. But we've noticed that a lot in the last 6 months. So I don't know, like, is that something you guys have noticed as well?
Yeah, so that's fascinating that you're seeing that on Pinterest specifically. So one of the things that we've been preaching pretty heavily is that a product page, needs to tell the story of the product, but also the brand.
Yeah.
Like every product page kind of has to be like a micro website.
Yeah.
Where essentially someone's going to come in and like, let's say it's a dress. They need to have all the answers that they're going to ask about that dress and about the brand.
Yeah.
So we're telling two stories at the same time. We're telling the story specifically around this dress, and then we're tying it into the brand story as well. So it's like, why should I buy this dress? Well, it fits well. It's organic cotton, it's sustainably sourced. It also has like a really flattering fit and style. And then, hey, here's some information about the brand as well.
Yeah.
Like we grow our own cotton, or, we support artisan laborers, or, we have like a city in Bali and they do all our manufacturing. Like, so it's like combination of these two things. So that's exactly right. Is if we send people to a really drab product page, where it's like, here's a dress, it's made out of cotton, like nobody cares.
Yeah.
And we see the bounce rate on those. And then obviously the conversion super low. It's like, it's bad. Yeah. So we're exactly seeing that especially on Facebook and Instagram, is you've got to be telling a story around that. And I think it's just that people are like, they want to know what they're buying.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And as I said, I don't know if this has always been a thing on Pinterest. For the ads, for the organic, definitely, without question, like you have to have this stuff in, but we're seeing it more and more. Like, just to give an example, we run a test with one client, pretty popular brand, supplement brand, and we split test. So we had the standard product listing, and we're talking very basic. It was like image, carousel, bullet points, add to cart. That was it.
Yeah.
And then on the other side, we had on the split test, we had a full info page, which really scratched at a major problem that this supplement solved, and an info page, maybe 500 to 800 words. Wow. And the difference was like 8 to 12x difference between the standard product listing and the info page. So we did this a couple of times with the same brand, and every single time we run an info page against a product listing, it was ridiculously different. So it was like, okay, like this is obviously not an accident. There is definite data that we can say for sure this is probably the route to go if possible.
Oh no, I love that. And I would even say, echoing that, like there's a scale. Like if like the more the product is going to interact with like your brain or your body, or like something where you're putting the product inside you or putting it on your skin, you need to have a pretty good product page. Like it's got to really be definitive and informative and educational. If it's something that's just, you're like buying a pair of socks, it's you can get away with a pretty standard product page, right? So I kind of use this sliding scale as like, if it's going to be if I'm going to be eating it or putting it on my skin or doing something like that. So kind of like health, beauty, wellness, you need to really max out that education aspect of that lander. Yeah. And then you can scale it down as you like go along that thing of like, well, it's like a watch, like, all right, well, I understand it's a watch, right? So stuff like that. So that's kind of like my scale is that I always think about.
I would just exactly repeat that. It's like, you don't need, you could test this, I suppose, but I don't think you need like a detailed info page for watches. Like
Right,
you need something, but it doesn't need to be the same as like the supplement stuff that we
Oh
had
my
in
gosh.
place. I mean, totally different. And there is definitely a scale. And I think, yeah, I would say like pretty much what you've just said, it's like health, beauty, supplements. What else did I put in there? Maybe some fashion. If you had like some bestsellers, maybe that would
Right.
be on the upper
Yeah.
end, but like everything else is kind of mid scale or even like lower end of the scale, definitely.
Yeah. You know, I'd agree with that. And that's what we're seeing on like TikTok, Facebook,
Yeah.
Instagram, very similar.
Do you
So
feel, oh, sorry, I was just
no,
going to
no.
think, do you feel, this goes back to like the creatives and the change in like behavior. How much of an impact do you think TikTok has had on user consumption of content?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Craig. So I think it's actually changed everything.
Okay.
I think it's changed everything. So here's what we're finding is that we will create content that is like TikTok first, and then we will serve that content on all our other platforms.
Interesting.
So we know that if it does well on TikTok, it's most likely going to do well on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.
Yeah.
It's almost like TikTok shifted the model because it used to be like 2 years ago on Instagram, we were creating really polished content. It was beautiful imagery. It was all graphically designed, and it was very little text, like, you know, here, like an elevated dress for an amazing evening. Like there was no sales detail. And then just like a beautiful image of the dress, and people like, boom, where do I sign? And now we're noticing that it's shifting way away from that and more towards organic, raw, funny, even like entertaining. Like people want to see you like trip in the dress. And like, oh, now I'm going to buy it. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's actually a really good question. I feel like TikTok has changed the whole content game.
Yeah. The reason I ask is I think this is why I think Pinterest is in that change, like going back to what we mentioned earlier. And I feel in the last 6 months, we're seeing actual TikTok videos show up in the feed on Pinterest.
Oh my gosh.
So people are just taking them and putting them up, or what's most likely happening is that there's a sharing platform where you can share content between platforms. And I don't know what this one is, but what might be happening is users, not actual creators or business owners, are just on TikTok. They like that TikTok video. They have a Pinterest account and they just share it to their feed. So it's popping up in the feed more often as well. So that's kind of like, I guess my question, original question was, I see it influencing Pinterest's behavior. And I think that's probably the route it's going to go. So it's like, oh, maybe it's on other platforms as well.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what we're seeing on our side is we always start the creative process on like, what do you think is going to drive the most views, engagement, and conversions on TikTok? And then we filter that down. And typically we'll only have to, you know, we might make some minor tweaks or edits, like maybe remove the watermark and do a couple other pieces. But if we can get it to rock and roll on TikTok, there's a good chance it's going to perform really well on all the other platforms.
Yeah, super interesting. Yeah, okay. I feel that's the path as well.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely seeing that. So for someone who's just like exploring Pinterest, maybe getting started, thinking about diving in there, what's 1 or 2 tips that you could share with them to set them on the right path?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there's a couple of layers to that. I would say let's say this is a new account, no authority, nothing, like brand new.
Yep.
I personally would adopt 2 mindsets when it comes to the organic, and then we'll talk about the paid as well. So I would say the first thing to do is approach Pinterest as more of an SEO platform and less of like social media. That kind of sets the mindset for expectations. And I would look at Pinterest organic as a very slow moving process for a brand new account. So I would not have it. I think it's easier to approach it with like high expectations, but a long time period. So, and this is kind of the same for like other SEO platforms, but approach it with the mindset of as SEO and you do all of those best practices because that's how you grow on Pinterest organically. The other aspect is I would also use Pinterest to maybe even guide your future content creation, because it's a platform that can give you search terms which are solutions, sometimes problems that people are looking for. So use that as a guide. So I would have, that's probably two aspects is
good advice.
Yeah, start with like actual decent expectations, but a long time period.
Yeah.
And underline with SEO, and also use the platform to guide content creation, because this platform will guide the right direction, especially if you're going to make content specific for the platform. It's important to do that. And on the paid advertising, I think like one of the first things to do is I would definitely apply to the verified merchant program as soon as possible. The quicker you can get the shop feature in, and you sync your catalog feed to the platform.
Yeah.
You having to do anything, your image, your products are already on the platform, and you will probably see an uplift whether you do anything or not. So definitely approach it with an SEO mindset, and I would definitely get the verified merchant program up and running too.
Yeah, those are great tips. Those are great tips. When I think about Pinterest and like the success that we saw there when we were heavily invested, it is really approaching it like from a farming aspect, where you're planting a lot of seeds, and you can have a big harvest, but it takes time. And it takes effort. You've got to weed the farm. You've got to make sure the animals don't tramp through it. You've got to make sure that everything's taken care of. You got to water it. Like, it's effort to get that, but you can have a huge harvest, a big yield, but it takes time. And so I think that's really sage advice from someone that's jumping in there, is just being slow, steady, consistent, and then building that up over time. No, I love that.
I would like on top of that, maybe like it's a little bit more like above, maybe a bit more advanced, is Pinterest used to be about volume. So you could pin, like we never did this, but we saw inside some clients' accounts when we onboarded them, they were pinning honestly hundreds of images a day. Like, geez, they had the content to do it. They were recycling some old content, but they were pinning hundreds a day. We never got to that volume. We didn't. There was like a diminishing point of return. It was like
for sure
around 20 images per day. Now, if I'm being honest, I would say anything from 1 to 8 per day, and that's it. I wouldn't think about going more than that. It's well enough from what we've seen anyway.
Right. Well, and I think it goes back to this idea around quality. Like creating better value stuff, and maybe spending a little bit more time on it, and then developing that and releasing it, instead of doing 400 semi not great images of your product.
Yeah, definitely.
I love that. Well, this is fantastic, Craig. I mean, there's some absolute nuggets of insights here that you've shared around Pinterest and just marketing and some of the trends that we're seeing. As we close stuff out, I always kind of like to ask a fun question, is like, as you're going into Q4 right here at the end of this year, what are one or two things that you're really excited about?
Yeah, that's a good question. So Pinterest is highly seasonal, and not just time of year. So Q4 is mental in terms of volume on everywhere. And Pinterest follows that same trend, definitely. So we're going to see possibly a 2 to 5x uptick in user activity, which is compared to like Q3. So that'd be quite exciting in general, which means possibly growth of user base of Pinterest, but also all of the users that kind of dropped off in Q3 will come back. So that would be interesting. And I would also say, on top of the seasonality of the time of year, anyone that's ever used Pinterest as a consumer might not see this play out, but from the back end, a business perspective, some of the holidays like around during the year and in Q4. So Christmas obviously is exceptionally high. Even Halloween, like all of the little holidays in the run up to Q4, it's out of proportion to how busy the platform gets to most other times of the year. So and maybe this is something somebody could use if they're using the platform, if they know they have something that is seasonal to that respect, or could possibly tie in some content to match the holidays,
Yeah.
that link to the product, I would highly suggest to do that now.
Yeah.
I would start to consider thinking about how I can tie this in, because Pinterest is pretty unusual, where you could start to run paid ad campaigns 6 to 8 weeks in advance of the event happening, and it's in the run up that it will grow. And I don't know, maybe other platforms you could have a shorter runway, but if you give yourself a longer runway, you will reap the benefit organically and paid.
Wow.
If you start a little bit sooner in the run up to something specific.
Oh, that's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's huge. Oh, I love that. Okay. Well, those are some great insights, Craig. Well, my friend, thank you so much for sharing so much and being so open with like some of the things that you've learned by being in the weeds for these last couple of years. Really appreciate your time. And I know that everybody that listens to this is going to get some serious value. If they want to reach out and engage with you, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, thank you. It's been awesome. So yeah, thank you for asking me to come on. It's I love doing these podcasts. It's one of my favorite things. And I just enjoy sharing the stuff that we've tested with everyone so they can use them. But yeah, if anyone would like to reach out, they can visit pinandgrow.com, and there's a bunch of info on there and a booking form.
Perfect.
If anyone wants to reach out for that, we will look over any existing account that's in place. And if there's no account in place, we will provide some suggestions on whether it's a good fit or not. So feel free to do that. And my email is craig@pinandgrow.com if somebody just wants to reach out direct as well.
I love it. Well, Craig, thank you again, my friend. This has been amazing. Enjoy the rest of your day out in Bali, and we will connect soon.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you, Taylor.